Well, I think those remarks by the President, Alicia, deserve some repeating. Quote, "I am not a racist. I am the least racist person you have ever interviewed. That I can tell you." I mean, the hyperbole that is associated with what President Donald Trump says should really encourage us all to take a step back and really evaluate what this president is saying. This is, of course, the president that came onto the political stage for all intents and purposes in questioning the birth of, or the place of birth of his predecessor, Barack Obama, accusing the president of being born in Kenya and therefore not eligible to actually occupy the highest office in the White House. He called Mexicans, when he launched his campaign, drug dealers and bad people. He initiated a ban on immigrants from countries largely in Africa and the Middle East, largely Muslim countries. So there is really, and I could go on, there's a track record here that people need to evaluate when they listen to what comes out of the mouth of President Donald Trump. And as you can imagine, being a politically divided country, Alicia, you are getting different views and people supporting the president's views, saying that, well, if he did use that word to refer to Africa and Haiti, then perhaps he's actually not mistaken. Many people agree with that sentiment. It's just an anomaly coming out of the mouth of a head of state. And so you see other people. There will be a protest, for example, in Manhattan, in Times Square later today, on the day that marks the legacy of Martin Luther King. So don't let the irony of that hit you in the face, to protest what comes out of this president's mouth, particularly as it relates to immigration coming to this country from around the world.
But Sherwin, look, I mean, the follow-up attempt that we've just heard now at trying to clear his name in a soundbite just now, where he says he's the least racist person, I mean, has certainly not helped him. What kind of questions have been raised by this particular statement? Do his utterances have any real chance of severing decades of work that has been done, as you've just mentioned, by his predecessors like Obama, in bettering relations with African countries, as well as other third world countries for that matter?
The problem here, Alicia, is that you're going to get divergent views in the United States. What are we talking about here? There was a meeting with a group of 6 senators at the White House, a private meeting, and since that meeting, leaks came out of that meeting, the Democratic senator confirming that he used the word, the only Democrat in that meeting, describing Trump as using, quote, vile, hateful, and clearly racial content, taking particular issue with the idea of certain people coming to the United States as immigrants from so-called, and I don't want to repeat the word that he used. But since then, we had 2 Republican senators who were also in that meeting saying they did not recall him using that language. Yes, he used tough language on immigration, but didn't use that. On Sunday, both these senators have now pushed back even more firmly, saying they don't recall him using those words at all, basically casting aspersions on the Democrat in the room that is saying he used vile and racial content. And so in that statement you just played from Donald Trump, he basically he goes further to say that, have you heard what the different senators are saying? So this is not a president, Alicia, that is going to admit that he made this mistake, that he made this faux pas. He's certainly not a president that will apologize. He has a track record, in fact, of standing behind these comments, but in this instance saying, well, I'm not racist, and asked it to a couple of the senators in the room. So you're not going to get a clear answer as to whether he is racist or not. What you're going to have is a debate, and people are going to have to decide. Remember, this is an election year in the United States. Absolutely. Come November this year, all seats in the House of Representatives are up for grabs, and a third of the Senate seats. So this might very well inform what we see happening later this year.
But I mean, Sherwin, with that in mind, let's look at this further now. We know that most countries don't, in fact, have U.S. embassies that are operational. Since Trump was elected into office, about 70% of resignations by U.S. diplomats globally. Surely this should concern the U.S. diplomatic agency as well as other related bodies. What are they saying? Because we understand that the White House has now tried to defend Trump's statements.
Well, this is the difficulty that diplomats have. I mean, diplomats serve at the pleasure of the President of the United States. They're appointed through Senate confirmations. We saw a resignation by the highest diplomat in Panama last week saying he could no longer serve under the Trump administration. And I think this is the conundrum facing diplomats around the world. How do you defend the utterances of the commander-in-chief whose pleasure you serve? And I think you're going to see this play itself out. You're going to see people resigning. We've seen this since the president's inauguration last year. This is the difficulty. I don't know the answer as to what happens now. We are in many ways in uncharted territory. This is a president that already this morning has tweeted several times, I presume from his bedroom. And this, just from a communications point of view, is a very difficult person to literally cage in, particularly for his communications director, his press spokesperson. They have a very tough job in spinning, in representing, in recalibrating the words of this president. And often, as you well know, Alicia, he shoots very much from the hip.
All right, and Sherwin, just a very quick one while we're still on that. I mean, what reasons is, of course, the presidential spokesperson giving as a defense to these utterances? Because we know that Trump first denied it and he hasn't really apologized, so to speak.
They haven't directly addressed his utterances. They are saying that, yes, there was a tough conversation on immigration. Remember, this is a conversation that is framed around the deferred action for childhood arrivals. Yeah. An executive order put into action by former President Barack Obama that essentially allows 1 million individuals who entered the country as minors or as children to receive a renewable 2-year period of deferred action from deportation. It also allows them to work, it allows them to study, it allows them to pay taxes. But Congress still needs to pass comprehensive immigration reform. So that was why they were in the room to begin with. And it is upon discussions about Haitian and El Salvadorian immigrants that that this word was used to refer to other places that included Africa. And that is the slippery slope they went down. Of course, now the White House is denying it. Trump is saying he wasn't a racist. And of course, Democrats are jumping on this and saying that, there's a track record here. And people really will have to look at that track record to decide on which side they fall in this argument.
All right, Sherwin, thank you so much. We'll definitely keep in touch with you as, of course, that story develops. We also are waiting here in South Africa the outcome of that meeting between Dirk and, of course, the international relations or a representative from the U.S. Embassy.